But, you know, imagine you're taking the chimp out on a leash. You're letting it out, it's going to roam around.
Then you just stick it in like some milk or some water or a smoothie or whatever, and then you knock it down. Yeah,
put a fork in me.
Even getting it up in the purple end. I
thought, oh, actually, that's quite enjoyable.
Without touching it, you got to try and get it in your mouth.
Everyone has a different degree of how much they fall off the wagon.
Yo, what's going on, guys? Rhys here from the More Than Lifting podcast with my good friend Chris Thatcher.
Hello,
mate. How are you doing?
I'm good, mate. Yourself?
Cool. Today we're going to be talking about nutrition, what you put in your body, you are what you eat, all that kind of nonsense, and that's about it. So we'll talk about that. We'll get into some other things as well, probably, and we'll probably make a few jokes and rude or crude innuendos, should I say, somewhere along the lines. So if we don't satisfy all those criteria, leave us a review and tell us we missed out a naughty story or two, and we'll make sure we double them up in the next episode.
That'd be great if there's reviews on iTunes where they just say there's just not enough rudeness in there. There's just not enough crude stories.
Tell us the brownie story again. Oh, mate, actually, I'm going to get into that today, the brownie story, because it's very, very relevant to nutrition, being about brownies.
I look forward to that.
Yeah, I think you got the idea of where it's going.
I really don't, but now you said that, I kind of do.
Yeah. Right, so nutrition is something that everyone obviously struggles with. People are like, I don't know what to eat. Should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? There's 1,021 different fad diets you can choose from, whether it's paleo, vegan, fruit. What's the fruitarian one? Probably that. There's like probably a meat-only one where you live exclusively off potatoes, and something to do with eating dirt and moss as well. So whichever one you choose, that's pretty much up to you, or really depends on what kind of stuff your body reacts to. If you can't eat gluten, for example, eating a lot of gluten would obviously not be too good for you. But that's about it. So, Chris, what are your thoughts on dinner?
What, for tonight or generally?
Just tonight, really. But I mean, we could do a general scope as well.
Well, look, okay. So you touched on it already. You know, we're primarily concerned with putting in the right things into our body, whatever that looks like to you. And I think that's the best place to start, because there are a lot of different solutions out there, and there are more things, more diet plans and perspectives coming into the mainstream consciousness every single day. So we've gone through the sort of paleo, obviously vegan, vegetarianism have been around for a long time. We've had Atkins, we've had fruitarian, as you said, we've had, pure plant, we've had, very raw based diets as well.
Raw food, man. That's
exactly. Juicing only diets, there's everything, there's so many different ways of supposedly, systemizing how you get food into your body, how you get fuel into your body, that it's very hard for people, I think, these days to identify what's best for them, because they, depending on what you might read or what a friend in the office has done, or what a training partner may have suggested has worked for them, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. And when I coach nutrition with people, and when I coach people generally, one of my primary ethos is that I want to meet people where they currently are. Not where they think they should be, but I want to meet them where they are. What are they eating right now? What do they like? What do they not like? What do we both agree is good for them? What do we agree is not so good for them? And we try and work back from that point, because people have very different reasons for being drawn into a particular style of eating. It might be, as I say, an article they've read, someone they've spoke to. It might just be something that ethically sits quite well with them. So obviously veganism, vegetarianism being the obvious ones there. And what I really want to stress today, and essentially a primary underlying foundation of our entire ethos, is that everything you have to do around training and nutrition it has to be subjective. It has to be something that, like we talked about in our mindset episode, it has to be something that really interests you, that you can attach yourself to, you can feel passionate about, you can find a greater why around doing it. And I don't think nutrition is any different. We've got to look at exactly why you want to make those changes into your diet, what the goal is at any given point in your training cycle, in your health in general. There can be a number of different reasons why you make a transition from where you're currently at into something new, and it's getting to the core of what those reasons actually are in the first place. So what I don't want to really do today, because we would literally do this over 2 or 3 episodes, is go deep into every single dietary type. I think we just want to really get into the facts about how to identify the right things for you, and how ultimately everything on some level does work in terms of getting fuel, getting calories, getting energy into your body. It's just making sure that you're getting the right types of energy in relative to the sort of training that you're doing, relative to the life that you're leading, and obviously any other intolerances, any issues you have around particular food types, any sort of things you may need to supplement into your diet to allow for any sort of shortfalls, particularly, again, when you're talking about veganism and vegetarianism, if you need to put things in that you're not going to now get from animal produce. There's not a lot of things. I think there's this misconception that you have to over supplement just to make up the difference between eating meat and not eating meat, and that's a massive myth, but we'll get into that in a bit more detail, because both you and I obviously have strong feelings, well, at least strong, I have strong feelings around the ethics of food in particular when it comes to eating animal produce. But so maybe it might be a good place to actually start talking about what we do, how we eat, the sort of the ethics and the awareness we have around our own diets, and then we can kind of broaden out from there. What do you reckon?
Yeah, that sounds good. Just before we get into that, I'm going to quote the guy quoting the guy who said that thing, and that was Chris Brogan in some podcast I listened to absolutely ages ago, and I'm pretty sure he was quoting someone when he said the best diet's the one that you're going to stick to. So it's not about being overly strict or overly slack on anything. It's about sitting down, like you say, what do you like, what don't you like, and then try and work a way to get to make as little adjustments or as easy adjustments as possible for you to then get them the healthiest version of what you're already doing. Instead of completely revamping everything, just kind of, like you said, start with what you've got, work out what the score is, and then adjust from there.
I would just to interject on that, because it's a lovely quote, but as a caveat to it, again, I think it's the best diet is the one you're going to stick to, but it's also the one that's going to be most relevant to wherever you are in your journey, because nutrition is a journey as much as training is as well. So alongside your training and your life changing, and obviously getting older, requirements change. That's a reality we all have to face. Some things you're going to be able to tolerate certain things at a much younger age than you are at an older age, and that's just a progressive process. And I don't think, even in our sort of field, we study nutrition, we understand it, we've kind of practiced on ourselves and experimented with a variety of things. My diet is actually changing all of the time. What I'm eating for breakfast, lunch and dinner at this moment in time may be very different in 6 months. It'll be built around the same sort of themes and ethics and ideas and ideologies I have around food, but it may just look a little bit different because seasonally it's going to change. Relative, as I said, to my training, it's going to change, and relative to where I'm at in my life, it's going to change. So all I want to stress is that again, there's a large degree of fluidity to diet as there is with training. Yeah,
definitely is. And like I say, it adjusts all the time. Sometimes you end up going out drinking a little bit too much. Sometimes you have a bad week where you eat loads of Reese's Cups. I'm speaking from personal experience here, obviously. And sometimes you catch yourself waking up at 5 a.m. and going down and basically sleep eating a whole box of chocolate bars, which I've also been known to do. But the basic idea is to make as good decisions as you can to adjust and improve and get the right stuff in you. Myself, I'm mostly vegetarian. I have been for like 2.5 years or so now, like quite a while. And it all started just as a little test, like where you were saying about doing experiments earlier, Chris. That was what it was. It was just a little test. I read all this stuff and I thought, I've got to give it a go. I'm doing myself a disservice by not giving it a go, because I've just gained all this knowledge about stuff, and I sat down and I've mulled it over and I've made a decision that is worth trying at least to see if it would go. And before that, I ate basically meat. I was a rugby family, burgers, steak and ribs and chicken wings, and that's it. You don't make friends with salad, as the old saying goes. But
it's a really nice salad, maybe, but
I love salad. And I do. I absolutely love salad, and a bit of beetroot, bit of cheese, a couple of nuts, mate, you can have it all in there. But before I was vegetarian, I didn't really eat a lot of salad. And the transition was really easy for me. I didn't struggle with it at all. I mean, there were maybe the first couple of days, there were like times where I wanted a sandwich and I was like, I've got to make this, I've got to put my discipline into action here and decide not to have a chicken sandwich, which is what I was looking at. And one difficulty with being a vegetarian is the lack of sandwich opportunities. If you are like working in the city or something, a lot of the times you can't just go to Tesco or Sainsbury's or whatever and grab this. You basically got cheese and onion, cheese and pickle, or cheese and onion pickle with some lettuce. And that's it. They're your veggie options. So unless you go in somewhere that costs an arm and a leg for a little sandwich, and so it's easy for you to kind of talk yourself out of it. But I think when I first apply something like that, like I first test something for my diet, I try mixing in smoothies for breakfast, or I try mixing in a little bit of meat every now and then when I fancy it, or if I go out to dinner, and then I see how that goes and I adjust accordingly. If I feel like, maybe I'll start introducing more meat into my diet, or less smoothies, or the total polar opposite, more smoothies and less meat, then I'll adjust it. I'll try it for a little bit, and then I'll evaluate it at the end for, say, a couple of weeks and see how I feel and how it's going, and if it's giving me the result that I wanted. And if it doesn't, then I check it out the window and I go back to eating chocolate.
Is that just your default?
Yeah. I think it's everyone's default. I mean, let's face it, we all just want to sit down and eat a couple of minstrels.
The sweet, not the old performing street artists.
Yeah. Little tiny chocolate buttons wrapped in a sugary shell.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if people in the States know what a minstrel is.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah,
probably.
Or anyone outside of the UK would know, so I shouldn't just say America.
Like
actually,
Maltesers then.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I guess they're universal.
Can't get Maltesers wrong. There's no other variation. There's no other meaning for Malteser, is there?
There's just no alternative. No.
Are you any good at the lying on your back and below any floaty Malteser thing?
Yeah, I think I'd used to do that.
I'm terrible at it. But you know what I am good at? The after 8 game.
What's the after 8 game, or is this something that we don't want to share with the public?
No, this is all right. The after 8 games, when you stick an after 8 like in between your eyes and your nose, kind of like that little middle bit of your brow, and then you got to, without touching it, you got to try and get it in your mouth. It's definitely an after 8 game. You can't play it before 8 p.m. because
just because
really good. Half the time they kind of melt on your cheek a little bit, and it's always good fun.
It sounds like good fun.
But that's what I kind of do with my diet anyway. It's mostly vegetarian. I don't really do supplements, and I don't really take it. I don't take any supplements. The only supplement I take is like coconut oil.
So on balance, on an average week, how much meat do you actually eat?
Little to none.
Okay. So, general advice would be, even if you're not feeling the need for supplementation, I think it's quite widely accepted now that, a B12 supplement and a creatine supplement are actually very useful for vegetarians and vegans now. They're kind of the two, I think, most agreed upon supplements because of the, obviously, reduction or complete elimination in your diet of those actual minerals that can't be derived from other sources, apart from obviously creatine, phosphate created in the body, but ultimately you can get a fair amount from meat as well, and it has very good cognitive effects as well as physiological effects as well, so it can help with memory and things like that, so that's a good thing to consider. And B12 is just a kind of considered essential vitamin now that you really have to, or really should, supplement if you want to thrive. You can survive without it if you're occasionally eating meat or dairy and things like that every now and then, but if you're not eating that much. But do you eat quite a lot of dairy?
Yeah, I'm a chease nut.
Cheese nut?
I don't have milk. I have hemp milk. We'll get on to hemp in a bit because that's like a whole conversation in itself. But yeah, I have cheese, and I don't cook stuff in coconut oil because I spend so much money on coconut oil that I kind of I don't want to like waste any in a pan, and I don't really like the flavor it gives stuff sometimes. So I cook in butter.
Right.
So I have cheese and butter. So yeah, basically I eat those dairy.
Do you fry cheese in butter?
fry eggs in butter and then cover them in cheese.
Okay.
I pour the butter on top afterwards as well. Sometimes I'll lick it off the plate. This is getting really sensual.
I was going to say, yeah, where is this actually going? So coming back,
dribbles down my elbow.
Oh dear.
Anyway, back to food.
Cracking on with nutrition in its entirety. So to expand on what you were talking about with your own diet, my diet is, I'm in a transitionary phase at the moment actually, which probably makes it quite relevant to what we're talking about now. I'm progressively moving to, I wouldn't necessarily say a vegan diet I'm not necessarily becoming vegan, because vegan is a much wider lifestyle choice, across the board. I think the more simplistic way of looking at it is going towards a predominantly plant-based diet. So, no meat, no dairy. There are small traces of meat. I think dairy is pretty much, I've completely eliminated, apart from, when it just sneaks in as trace amounts in foods where I'm maybe not that aware of it, because it is really hard to check absolutely every little detail. But I'm trying as much as I can not to eat dairy. And I've been doing it very progressively. I've made the mistake of trying to switch to, full-blown vegetarianism, or, I've dabbled with veganism in the past, but didn't do it very well. And now I've actually taken the time to really do it more gradually, as I just alluded to, look into the necessary supplementation that people recommend who are really thriving on that sort of diet as well. And, at a very minimal level, I don't want to be popping 20 pills a day, but there seems to be about 4 or 5 essential supplements that people recommend to maximize not just your healthy day-to-day body, but also optimize your training performance as well. And I've got to say, I've been doing that progressively now for about the last 2 months, for health reasons, for ethical reasons, ecological reasons. I've immersed myself massively in the whole sort of cowspiracy world, and I can't ignore it now. I realize that there's far too many reasons to make that transition. However, that said, I've been a meat eater for the majority of my life, and consumed a lot of dairy as well. So I'm not making any judgments on people that want to stick to those sort of things. But I do think, and there's a lot of good literature out there about the necessity for people to reduce animal produce in their diet regardless, even if it's just going down to 1 meal a day, because the whole fallacy about lack of protein in a vegan or vegetarian diet is completely incorrect. Obviously, in a vegetarian diet there is dairy. You can get into the ethics of that if you want, but I think we'll leave that aside, because that's not really why we're here. But in a full-blown plant-based vegan diet, then obviously there is absolutely no necessity for meat to get protein. There's a number of different things. Now, there's always going to be, and going back to my original point about making it subjective, there are going to be people who have a number of different intolerances for whatever reason. They're few and far between, and we live in an intolerance world where everyone kind of gets a little bit of bloating after eating a slice of bread and thinks they're celiac. It's like, it's probably just
you're just
bad
eating
bread.
Too much bread, mate. That's all it is. It's
exactly. Yeah. Every time I eat bread, I get really bloated. I must have a gluten intolerance. And it's like, well, how much bread do you eat? Oh, like 5 rolls. And it's like, okay, yeah, just for lunch. And you're like, okay, well, so not making fun of anyone who does have celiac, because I do know people who are. And it can be a real nightmare to effectively rearrange your entire diet around that condition. It's very debilitating. It's a horrible thing to kind of suffer with until you actually understand how to work around it. So the great thing about it is having some sort of intolerance, or having something you really have to address, whether it's from a health perspective, whether it's an ethical perspective, it really makes you think a lot more about what you're putting into your body. And immediately the quality of the food going in just improves naturally, because you don't have the luxury of convenience. Like you said, when you're out at lunch, you can just pick up a sandwich if you don't care. Like if you eat meat, if you eat dairy, you don't have intolerances, you just go, oh yeah, fine, I'll just pick up any old sandwich because I can eat everything. And that's fine from an ethical perspective. Not everyone is on the same page consciously about, the different reasons why we should reduce certain things in our diet. But the overall quality of your diet immediately is always hugely diminished, because just by the fact that you think you can eat everything, or you're happy to eat everything, means that you're not checking things as much. You're not as aware as you could potentially be about what you're putting into your body. So I think when you look to eliminate one particular thing, whether it's a paleo diet and you're looking to eliminate grains and a lot of starchier carbohydrates, and just focus predominantly on meat and vegetables, And there's now a whole number of different paleo. You can have paleo vegan diets now, which kind of blows your mind because they used to be on kind of contrasting ends of the spectrum, but now there's a happy medium. I don't think that's that
difficult, though, to be honest with you. I mean, I always try and stay. I mean, this might be a good time to actually just talk about paleo, and really, I try and stay like relatively ketogenic. It just as a general physiological state. I try not to I try to eat like fat heavy all the time with my macros, and I don't sit and track everything. I don't stress myself out about it or anything like that, because I think most food is generally quite good for you. It's just being, like you say, having that awareness. But it's easy just to say, look at something and go, oh, that's quite high in carbs, it's quite low in fat. I must make a note to have more fat later, or try and have something with more fat in it now with it, just to keep in a slightly higher fat state, so that you're using that as energy rather than the carbs so much.
Yeah, and we do have to be careful, and I think we're going to keep going off on tangents here, aren't we? Because nutrition is such a broad subject.
Yes, we can only really dip our toes in the pond. Do you know what I mean with this?
Yeah, I think, well, again, like a lot of things, we'll come back to it further down the line, and we can address individual diets, and we can update people on where we're at with our own, whether we're making any changes and trying something that's working really, really well. Not as a recommendation to other people, but just kind of giving the insight as to how much experimenting we're still continually doing with our own stuff. So it's, you don't have to have it all figured out. I don't, at 35,
we never really have it all figured out, though, I don't think, will we? Because like, even if you eat even if you're like, I've got it all sorted, I eat loads of bananas and rah rah rah, next thing you develop an autoimmune disease to bananas, and now you can't eat bananas again. So it's like a continuous process of you adjusting all the time, and it all works in cycles, just like everything in life. It's up and down. It's like this continual little sine wave going along everywhere, where you go from eating awesome to eating shit, and it's back and forth, and it's just when you're eating shit, it's just to go, right, come on, let's just get back on the app, get back up that sine wave to where I was eating a lot better, and minimize the troughs, or at least make those low points in your diet as high as possible. So when you are eating shit, it's actually quite good compared to most people.
Yeah, definitely. And very simply, if you're thinking, you're winning, because it's not going to be perfect, but perfection doesn't exist in any sense. And there are people out there that would like to purport a public image of perfection, being up at whatever time in the morning, doing all the kind of meditative morning rituals, training consistently in a particular discipline, and eating a very specific way, and setting themselves up as an example to others. And that's fine, that's great, but again, it's subjective. That's their life, that's their choice, whether or not it's completely true or not, or whether they are fallible and they're just not sharing that. And I think most people are fallible to some extent. Everyone has a different degree of how much they fall off the wagon, or how much they slip, or skip a training day, or miss a good meal, or just slam some minstrels and Maltesers, like you said. Everyone has those little moments where they can slide. It's just whether or not you're kind of seeing that. And we expect nowadays that we kind of should see a broad spectrum of people's lives, and they should highlight the moments where they slip and fail as much as when they're succeeding and becoming being the perfect example. But that's not the case, and it does create this, I guess, misleading perception of certain people, particularly in the fitness industry, or as being perfect when they're not, and that becomes more damaging, because it means that then the general public looking at that think, well, I can never aspire to that, so what's the point of even trying? I'm just going to go back and eat my cheeseburger. So
and it sets the bar too high. So it discourages people from being good, because they think, like you say, I can never be that. I can never be perfect with it, quote unquote. And but stop punishing yourself like that for it. I don't. So there's no point in. I'm definitely not going to punish you for it. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to punish Chris. So you're accountable to yourself, and it's good not to compare yourself. Use people like that as role models, and seek advice off them for everything, of course. But you don't think, I wasn't supposed to have a cheat day, and now I've eaten this thing. It's all out the window. Don't give up so easy, and just stick with it. Everyone makes little mistakes. Everyone has little problems, and that's everyone. Even the pros, even the people who are perfect, they still fuck it up occasionally, even if it's by accident. Do you know what I mean? So if you wanted to, you could probably follow them around for 3 months and catch them doing something. And, but that doesn't matter. Like, if you just do as best you can with your food, if you recognize when you're not eating as well, and you try and maybe get a bit more protein if you're not eating a lot, or maybe get some more veg in it. It's just about sorting it out and being aware, like you say, and being able to, or knowing how to. And I think that's one of the big problems with nutrition, is people aren't sure how to adjust or how to like fix it up. So it can be quite difficult. It can be quite paralyzing, because you don't really know. You're like, well, I'm eating this, and I think it's all right. But maybe that this and this is actually microwave meals, and it turns out half of it isn't really food. It's like mostly plastic.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's difficult, and I think we aren't very well educated on our nutrition, really. I mean, we're given these weird little RDAs, which I don't think anyone really knows what the exact numbers are. Everyone just goes, oh, that's a bit too much, or that's a bit, do you know what I mean? No one really has the right answer for you with your diet. So don't expect someone to come along and just go, oh, just eat broccoli and chicken, because let's face it, it's boring as hell. No one wants to just eat broccoli and chicken. I don't. And I'm not a sucker for sauces, but if you just give me broccoli and chicken, I want something on it. Do you know what I mean? Even if it's just salt and pepper, and mate. Why? It's not difficult. Nutrition is not really difficult. It can be hard to stick to, and it can be quite stressful, but it's like, just eating well isn't hard at all. It's really not difficult. I don't understand how people, well, I do understand how people can have issues with it, because it's like your situation and stuff like that. And like, if you're quite young and you're just like living with your parents, or you're at university or in college or something, it can be difficult for you to like eat super healthy, because you don't have the money, or you're not buying the food or whatever. But it's just about making as better decision as you can with what you've got.
Absolutely. And going back again to the underlying theme of all of this, it is completely subjective. So within every dietary discipline, every system, every kind of umbrella concept, such as vegan, paleo, ketogenic, whatever, there's always a way by which to suit that model, suit that methodology, if that's what you believe in, if it's what you want to experiment in, to you more personally. So there might be certain animal certain animal products you don't eat under a paleo diet. Under a vegan diet, you may not choose to eat any of the processed alternatives. There's a lot of people that will say, yes, I know it's great that there's alternatives for meat and beef and chicken, and I mean, it's insane, particularly in the US, but now much more globally, how many alternative things there are. And there's a lot of people who say, actually, I don't want to eat overly processed stuff. I don't want to eat meat substitution stuff, because I don't really like the taste of meat anymore. The idea of eating something that still tastes like meat seems quite wrong, because that's against the choices I've made. Equally, within ketogenic diets, you can personalize that to some extent. The key thing is, as we keep coming back to, is looking at what is going to work best for you, and doing that very, very progressively. Making sure that you're not trying to reinvent the wheel overnight. Again, it's a perfect comparison to fitness training. You're going to see it. We're coming to the end of the year now. We know we're going to see it in January, where everyone tries to hit the gym in January or go out running every day, and they're going to go too hard, too fast. They're going to go all in, want to make fundamental changes to absolutely everything they're doing, and they're going to fail, because it's almost too much to sustain long term. Certainly because they've not created the conditions, they've not built the habits and behaviours progressively enough to make the positive change last. So they get disillusioned, and I think we've talked about this on a previous show, where ultimately it will take one little slip up. We're talking about your mindset, actually. It will take one slip up and they're off the wagon. It all goes to hell. And it's the same with the diet. One bad meal and you think, well, actually I've broken the run now, so sod it, I might as well just go back to where I was before. And it's a real shame, because it only takes one good meal to get you back on track. And this is the problem with a lot of these systems where you do a 30-day detox, or Whole 30, where you just eat no grains and processed food for a month, and if you have one cake, you write the whole thing off. It's not the way it's supposed to be. And we do live in an age where we have all of the information to hand, so no, it shouldn't be difficult to understand what a good diet is going to be like in the context of your life personally. But equally, there is so much information that you don't even know where to start. You don't know what to work with. So as I touched on earlier in the episode, the best thing to do is look at where you're currently at, what you like, what you don't like, what you know is good, what you know is less good. And I don't want to talk about things being bad, because bad makes it sound like it should be off limits and you should never have it again. And for some people,
sounds like you should rip it off the shelves and like start protesting pickled onions in the supermarket.
Well, look, the reality is, and I talk about the different types of responsibility there are in society nowadays, and certainly from an individual's point of view, I don't think there's enough acceptance of responsibility at a social, sort of governmental level or a corporate level when it comes to food. I think that's a universal truth. So ultimately, the responsibility will always fall on you as the individual to make choices. But one thing we do have to accept is that certain foods are going to stay on the shelves for, certainly for our lifetime and potentially beyond. We are in a revolutionary phase to some extent. There is a lot of change going on. People are becoming more conscious, but there's also, a Twix will still sell, various chocolate bars and cakes and biscuits and, processed ready meals and things like that. They're going to keep selling. There is a market. The market decides ultimately, and people will continue to buy those things. So if you're the sort of person that is sometimes inclined to make that sort of snap purchase or go for the convenient, ready meal or whatever it might be, it's going to be there in front of you. So that's not going to go away. What we don't want to do is say, you can't have that. You absolutely should never have it again in your life. It's just trying to minimize how much you do and trying to fill your diet, fill your nutrition practice, your nourishment practice with as much good stuff, so that all of a sudden you think, well, I don't need that anymore. I certainly don't need it as much. It is a one-off every now and then, rather than it's my staple go-to meal 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And I think that's such an important way of looking at it, because if you start to demonize certain types of food, it almost makes them a little bit more appealing. It creates more stress around it as well, because you then beat yourself up if you do have a little slip. And it's so important to accept that, we can be so wonderfully conscious and aware and in control of ourselves and, mastering ourselves all the time. But that can get quite tiring. Sometimes the limbic brain is going to kick in, the little monkey, the little chimp on the wheel is going to say, I want to eat that, or I want to shag that, or I want to fight that. These little urges, these little things are going to kick up, and it can be very dangerous to suppress them. Sometimes it's a good thing to exercise them, but imagine you're taking the chimp out on a leash, you're letting it out, it's going to roam around. I'm not even sure where I'm going with this analogy, but I'll keep pushing on it and just let it go. But it's a difference of saying, okay, well, I'll take the packet of chocolate biscuits out of the fridge, and what I'm going to do is I'm not going to take the packet of chocolate biscuits over to the sofa. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take 3 biscuits out, and I'm going to put the rest of the packet back in the fridge. I'm going to go and eat those biscuits. I'm going to eat them slowly. So this is a great habit to start cultivating, is just eating a little bit more slowly.
Oh, the old biscuit licking trick.
The old biscuit licking trick. Yeah, well, look, just in, really, and this is where mindful eating comes in, and God, that's a whole other conversation, but we'll do that another time as well. But taking the time to actually enjoy the food that you're eating, certainly in Western culture, and I was sort of brought up in a household where everyone kind of ate fast. If you didn't eat fast in my house, normally my dad would take something off your plate. So you had to be quick. And, we're kind of talking while we're eating, and eating such a sociable thing a lot of the time. It's something where we're kind of engaged with other people, but we're not really thinking about the food. We're not enjoying the taste of it. We're kind of shoveling it in a lot of the time. So one of the real wins you can achieve very, very easily is just to slow down your eating. And what you may start to notice is actually you're getting fuller quicker, or certainly getting fuller at a certain point that you wouldn't otherwise have got to if you ate it really, really fast before your body's had a chance to acknowledge that the food's in your stomach and it's had enough now and it doesn't want any more. So that can be really important in terms of just a very small, gradual calorie deficit if you need one, if that's kind of what's going on in the diet, just not eating more than you absolutely should in one go. So what I mean is about going back to my little monkey analogy, it's letting that kind of very primal, that instinctual urge to kind of eat. And we know there's a desire for sweetness and fatty foods, because that's built into us, because it's something about energy storing. It gives us, we think we still operate on a very primal level in that regard, that when we're given the opportunity for those sorts of food, as I say, the limbic brain kicks in and it starts to say, yeah, we don't know when we're going to get more of this, so let's get on as much as we possibly can. It's like those genes kick in from a very, ancient place where we suddenly start thinking, I need all of this now because it may be taken away some point in the future. There may be a starvation situation where, I'm not going to get this opportunity again. But we know that's not true, because we live in a civilized society where we can just go to the supermarket and just pick up what we want.
Was that a civilized intentional?
No, that was that was actually just me clearing my throat.
Oh, right. I thought you were like, we're so civilized.
No, but you can cut that if you like and make it sound that way, because I get your point, and that actually makes a lot of sense. But
yeah, so we're that civilized that we can't even eat well. No. Brilliant. You know what I mean?
So anyway, as I was saying, let the limbic brain, let the monkey run around, but just put it on a leash a little bit. You know, maybe one of those extendable leashes. You know, you don't have to rein him in too hard, but just let him, you know, have his biscuits, have his cake, have his little bit of a treat.
5 meter diameter.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a ringed. I've got a really strong vision in, you know, picture in my head of a ringed fence. You know, a little area where he's kind of attached to a pole and he's running around and doing what he likes. But anyway. There's a nice strong image for you.
No, that was good. Sorry, mate, to interrupt you. I'm absolutely desperate for a wee, and I've been trying to tell you, and you keep bloody talking. All right, so sorry about that little interruption with my bladder. Right, so cool. We've done over the whole idea of eating as well as you can. Don't punish yourself for it. Try and stick to it. If you slip, you know, keep going. Rah 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 rah. So let's get into more interesting stuff. That was a very slow drum roll. What kind of stuff do you eat? What kind of proteins do you do? Because if you're going kind of vegetarian, vegan-y, that I'm the same. So I'm doing this. I have the same kind of situation going on. Although I do like my cheese. What kind of stuff are you going after for your protein, for your vitamins and stuff like that, mate?
So, in terms of whole foods, in terms of just my normal diet, I tend to eat. Obviously, I eat a lot of fruit, a lot of green vegetables, a lot of leafy vegetables. I tend to try and eat quite a lot of carbohydrate because of my energy output, you know, consistently with training and just sort of generally being fairly active anyway. So I tend to eat a lot of starchier carbs, you know, root vegetables, potatoes, carrots, parsnips, rice as well. Brown rice is a great source of protein. I think a lot of people just think of rice as being carbohydrate, but there's actually, you know, brown rice in particular, there's a good percentage of protein, so much so that you can actually get brown rice protein powder, which obviously isn't that nice on its own. I recommend mixing that in with some other things. Then obviously lentils, chickpeas, quinoa, all these different natural sources. And I think the mistake I made for a long time was believing that I needed more protein than I actually do.
Yeah, and it's easy to slip into that, especially if you're training and you're like, gotta have 30 grams of protein before lunch, gotta have 30 grams of protein at lunch, gotta have 30 grams of protein 2 hours later, gotta have 30 grams of protein for dinner.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, and it's like overdo it, and it's just unnecessary. It's totally unnecessary. Most of your protein comes from every little bit of food that you eat. So it's something that it's a big stigmatism, I think, that people get stuck in. And
well, that's it.
Yeah, that's the big issue with vegetarian. They're like, well, I can't eat any burgers, so where can I get my protein from?
Exactly, and it's, you know, with plant-based nutrition, it's little incremental, you know, intakes, unless it's obviously something that has a very high protein density to it. But obviously with meat, it's kind of just predominantly a slab of protein. So people can look at that and go, well, yeah, look, there's a big healthy serving of protein in one hit. And again, from a convenience point of view, it's very easy then, isn't it? Because you can just have essentially a chicken breast
and it's done,
some rice and maybe some avocado or something, and that's kind of all your macros taken care of. That's your protein, your carbs and your fat done in one meal without having to think too much about it. And what I do like is having quite a broad range of vegetables in my diet, because I know I'm going to get more protein that way, because, you know, it's just going to increase the intake, but it also makes my meals a lot more interesting as well.
Yeah, it's not the same boring stuff. And I think a lot of people who when they first get into training, they're talking about like diets, and everyone says just eat chicken and broccoli like 5 times a day, like every meal, just boil it, blanch it, nuke it, whatever, and that's it. But I think it's really important to have the variance in your diet. You know, it's good to have loads of different veg, loads of different fruit. Don't eat the same stuff all the time. Like I personally have a lot of, or at least not in the last few weeks, but all summer I was having smoothies every day, and I'd put different fruit in it as much as possible. so that I could always be having different. Otherwise, you top up on and you overdo like certain nutrients and you miss out other ones or minerals and stuff like that. And it's easy just to balance it or have a bit of everything. You don't get bored of anything that way, and you constantly just mixing it up, different flavors, different textures. It's a much more enjoyable way to eat, and it's a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, completely. And if you are, I mean, I don't want to just, because, you know, with your vegetarian leanings and my sort of journey at the moment into a more plant-based diet, I don't want to dismiss people out of hand for, you know, with eating meat. The recommendations, they're always going to be the most obvious ones, is to eat the leanest protein you possibly can.
Yeah.
So make sure if it is going to come from an animal source, it is as lean as possible. It is, you know, chicken breasts, it is steak, it is a chop, you know, it's not minced up sausage meat type things where everything's kind of mashed up and you don't really know what you're ultimately getting. So from a health perspective, that's going to be the best way of going about it. And those sort of foods tend to be more filling as well. You know, a dense chunk of lean protein is going to fill you up a lot quicker than burgers and sausages. So you're going to eat naturally less animal protein as well. And I think that is actually an important thing, even if you are quite happy to continue eating meat. I think it's something that is well recognized even by the paleo community. You know, large meat eating populations, you know, the information is still coming out all the time, particularly like even in the US, you know, where their dietary guidelines are becoming more along the lines of eat less animal produce because it makes the body very acidic. And what that starts to do is force the body into neutralizing that by drawing out, for example, phosphate or calcium phosphate from the bones, which is obviously where you get the increase in osteoporosis going up. You know, so this fallacy of, you know, drink milk to strengthen your bones, well, it's actually quite the reverse. You know, we don't really need to take on high calcium foods, certainly not from protein, certainly not from animal sources, not even necessarily from supplementation. There is actually enough in a broad range diet or a varied diet, and our body creates enough of it anyway. You know, our bones can be very dense, and training helps with that to keep them strong, because it forces the body to strengthen the bones in relation to the strengthening and the densifying of the muscles. I don't even know if densifying is a word, actually.
It's a pretty good one that we should submit for next year's word of the year.
Yeah, I think I'm having that. Anyway, but obviously as your sinew, as your connective tissue, as your muscles get stronger and start to put more stress on your skeletal structure, your body's then going to respond to that and help to strengthen, create more calcium phosphate and start to strengthen the bones. Yeah. But what you don't want to do is have such an acidic body, because you're consuming loads of dairy and loads of meat, you know, all the time, that it's having to draw that out to neutralize it as well. So that's forcing you to have to supplement to neutralize the meat that you're putting in, or the animal products that you're putting in. So you do still have to be mindful of that. And that's not me being some militant vegan or plant-based guy, because I'm not there, and I don't think I ever will be there. I want, again, to meet people where they are and just say, look, if you're going to continue to eat these things, just be as mindful as you can from a health perspective, if not from an ethical or an ecological one, just for your personal health and well-being, and your optimization of your energy, because that's the biggest thing I've noticed, and I guess you may have seen the same, is as soon as I started cutting out animal produce, my energy level started to increase. Yeah,
definitely. Almost immediately as well. Like a lot of people say when they try and go vegetarian or something, they end up really tired, and I found the total opposite was the case for me. I had much more energy, but I think a lot of that was because I started with a bit of knowledge about it in a good place. Like I was already having wheatgrass, for example, which is great for alkaline in your body, like getting it out of that heavily acidic state and kind of neutralizing all the acidity, and even getting it up in the purple end of the litmus spectrum, which is really good for you. You know, that's the kind of natural state that our bodies are in, like you were saying just then, which was also a great source of B2 and zinc and manganese and lots of other like dodgy little metals that it can be quite difficult to get into your diet otherwise, whether you're eating lots of plants or whether you're eating shitty microwave meals. Like a lot of people do have like zinc deficiencies and other mineral and precious metals that we do need in our body. I'm not talking gold or silver, I'm talking copper, manganese, iron and stuff like this. Your body needs them, and getting good. You get a lot of it from plants anyway, but like something like wheatgrass, I take almost as a supplement, and I twice a day or 3 times a day, depending on how deficient I'm feeling. But and that's great, and that's pretty much, I do that, and then I'm like, right, that's set. I know I've got like a good bit of nutrient in me straight away. I can get up, I can have a nice bit of wheatgrass for breakfast, or just as like a quick meal if I'm going like train. I usually train in the morning, so if I'm doing that, I'll just have a shot of wheatgrass and I'll just go training. Or I might have like a hemp shake. Oh, that actually reminds me. Sorry, I'm bouncing around all over the place now.
I feel we've been quite erratic with this episode because it is such a broad subject, and
we were talking about osteoporosis a second ago. Come on.
Yeah, but that's relevant to nutrition.
It is important, and I'm not dismissing it, Chris. Sorry, that come out wrong, I think. But
my point is that it's all relevant to nutrition because ultimately, what you put into your body, training's so important because it encourages people to move. Whatever training it is you do, whether it going all to the extreme of high skill stuff like we've talked about before, or whether it's just going for a walk, a swim, doing the odd yoga class, or doing a bit of spinning, whatever it might be. Training movement is so important in the context of a modern life because we don't do enough of it naturally. Our work doesn't involve that sort of thing, but it's such a small percentage of our health and wellness. If you did barely any movement, barely any sort of strength-based training, if you just did a little bit of light stretching every day, I'm not saying that's optimal, but I'm saying it's fine because you're doing something at the very least as opposed to doing nothing whatsoever. But if your diet is completely on point, if what you're putting into your body, how you're hydrating it, and I'll get to that in a second, how you're optimizing the quality and the nutrient density to the foods that you're getting in, and in terms of getting in the right amount of calories as well, that you're not under eating, but you're certainly not overeating, there is a balance to be struck there as well, then you're going to be okay. Like, you're going to be doing pretty good.
Yeah, most food is good for you.
Yeah, it's a bigger conversation, a more important conversation than training. That's the reality, and that's maybe where we've underestimated, how much we would talk about in one episode. So
but there's no right answer either, so it's like all speculation to some extent. Like, it's all about just testing it for yourself, trying it out. That's what it is. Like, I mean, I can't tell you exactly what you need to eat because it might not be what's right for you. It depends, and I can't just look at you and say, well, you need more of this or you need less of that. I can give you ideas. I can tell you maybe eating more fat than carbs is going to help you burn more fat off your body long term, but it doesn't necessarily mean it will work if you're not doing everything else, like if you haven't got everything in line. And and fitness is like this whole big balance, and often a bit of an uphill struggle, especially when you start, because it seems very overwhelming. But the more you can simplify it and the simpler it gets, the easier it's going to be for you to A, maintain, and B, get results from without stressing yourself out, without struggling, without fucking it up, and without throwing it all down the drain. A lot of people talk. Sorry, Chris, go on.
No, go on.
A lot of people talk to me about shakes. A lot of people ask about shakes and like pre-workout, post-workout, mid-workout, one before bed, one before breakfast, nourishment, fridge, bloody active milk or whatever the other one is. I'm trying to think of just, max protein or whatever it is, max muscle or fucking, do you know what I mean? There's so many off-the-shelf products, tubs, powders, ready-mades, blends, liquids, fucking everything. It's really confusing. All I recommend to people when they ask me about shakes, like pre-workout, post-workout or anything, is I have hemp. I have hemp. That's what I have. It's basically just ground up hemp seeds. It's just like having whey protein powder, as in you just stick it in like some milk or some water or a smoothie or whatever, and then you knock it down, But it's got loads of macronutrients, more so than whey protein, and it's easier for your body to utilize it because there's more bioactive compounds in seeds and hemp specifically than there is in like milled concentrated whey protein that basically just tastes like cake mixture. Yeah. So if you're looking for something...
Sorry, I thought you were going somewhere else then.
No, I was just breathing.
Okay.
So if you're looking for something just to chuck straight into your diet that you can, an easy win straight away is instead of taking like whey, even though it can be quite cheap, if you switch it out for hemp, then you immediately get a load of other nutrients with it it's not just protein specifically. Your body metabolizes it a lot more effectively and efficiently because you've got everything else around it to help you use it properly. And it's better, I think, and I'll give the toss with anyone about it, that it is better than whey protein too. And this kind of brings me on to my brownie story, Chris.
Before you get into the brownie story, can I just as a an alternative to your hemp protein, I actually have been using pea protein.
Oh right, yeah.
Recently, because I
nice?
started out with hemp and I didn't find it as soluble in shakes and whatnot. It was leaving things tasting very powdery. Now that might have been the combination I was using, the way I was making the shakes, but I found the pea protein to be less obvious as a sort of powdery mix, maybe less dense as a powder, but also I do believe it has a slightly, not a lot, I think hemp and pea is certainly at the very top of the list. I think it has a slightly denser protein content per 100 grams, so it's got a little bit more protein in it per serving than hemp does, but not a lot. I think it's very marginal, but I thought, well, I didn't really get on with the hemp, I'll try the pea, but maybe if I went back to hemp now I'd probably manage it better because I've been experimenting more with the consistency of smoothies and whatnot. Yeah,
maybe. Some people do tell me they find that, and if I make a shake or like a smoothie at home, some people for people they say, what's in it, because it is a bit grainy, and I think that's just it's a seed. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's just naturally a bit more rough than like a nice squeezy green pea.
Indeed, and that again, I'm not going to delay your brownie story much longer. But that
Chris, get on with the brownie story.
That raises another slight point, and this is something we can broaden out again somewhere down the line. When it comes to nutrition, when it comes to your diet, when it comes to what you eat, sometimes you do have to accept that food is a fuel source. We've had the luxury of growing up in a society in the Western world anyway, where we believe or certainly expect that we have to really, really enjoy every meal. Like everything has to be of a really high standard, it has to be really flavoursome, it has to be kind of a gourmet type experience. At the very least it has to be lovely. And obviously we've been conditioned with sugar being in absolutely everything. We've started to get used to over time having everything slightly sweeter or having a multitude of different flavours. And that's great. We should enjoy food. It should be a pleasant experience. But sometimes it's okay just to say, I just need the energy. I just need the bare bones of, my protein, my carbs, my fats, and as many calories as I can get in necessary to that particular meal. It doesn't have to always be overly tasty and delicious. It can just be something that's cooked, it's healthy, it's edible, and that's okay because it's just smash and grab, it's on the go. Convenient food doesn't have to be something that's massively processed. It can just be something that's very simple, and while it might not be the greatest meal you have that day, that week, that month, or in your entire lifetime, it's serving a purpose. It's getting as much nutritional quality into your body on every aspect, so in terms of the amount of food that you're getting in, the quality of the food you're getting in, and also just ultimately the simplicity of it as well. So sometimes it's okay to lower your expectations of how delicious a meal should be. And the reason I brought that up is sometimes when you're experimenting with smoothies and shakes with different types of certainly vegetable protein, you do have to accept an adaptation to, maybe I'm not aware of the pea protein or the hemp protein as much now because I'm just used to it. I just don't think it's any different because I've gone from when I've made the transition from using, say, whey protein, when it was this really almost creamy milkshake type consistency, which is this almost, lovely sweet treat after a workout, making the transition to something that maybe was a little tiny bit more grainy, even though it was mixed in with lots of other things. At first, I probably, from thinking back, did become aware of that and think, I don't know if that's as nice as the whole whey protein. It could take a bit of getting used to. But you do get used to things. Your tastes change, you adapt, you accept things more. So sometimes it just takes a little bit of time to get used to new things and letting them form part of your diet. Don't dismiss them straight away. I guess that's the main point I wanted to make there.
Yeah, when I first started doing wheatgrass, I hated it. Absolutely disgusting. It took me 2 weeks to come around, 2 weeks of having it every day to be able to just have it by itself before I had to have some squash or some orange juice or something there to drink immediately afterwards. I'd knock it down in one massive gulp, and then I'd have like the orange juice to kind of sip afterwards to hide the flavour. After about 2 weeks, my body had adapted to it. It knew that it was getting a lot of benefit from having it, and you like you say, your taste adjust you to enjoy it more. And I love wheatgrass now. It still tastes like shit, but I'm much better at putting up with it now than I was when I first started it. Before I had to tie myself down, lock myself in the kitchen just to actually have it. I'd do everything I could to avoid actually having the wheatgrass. And now I love it.
Sounds pretty traumatic, but yeah, okay, whatever you have to go through. Hopefully other people's experience of things won't be quite as extreme. Let's not put people off wheatgrass. Maybe you'll actually enjoy it. Everyone's tastes can be different.
Yeah, but I'm just agreeing with you in that you don't expect it to be like the equivalent of having a Kit Kat for dinner, because it's not. It's literally grass. So it's going to taste like, you can't expect it to taste like cakes.
Well, and this is the killer when it comes to, again, I don't want to go too heavy on the sort of anti-animal product line, but, dairy, like cheese, milk, meat, they taste good.
Yeah.
Like, there are people who are vegan and vegetarian who would still say to you now, I do maybe miss the taste of bacon. I do miss a bit of cheese every now and then. Mm. It's why the alternative marketplace for those sorts of foods are huge, because there's a lot of people that don't want to eat the animal produce, but they still want to get the experience and the taste, or as close as they can possibly get to that. So that stuff all tastes great and lovely. And sometimes things that are good for you don't always taste good. Even as an adult, you don't always adapt or really take things on as much as you would like. Sometimes you have to kind of grin and bear it a little bit if you think you really want to get that particular health benefit. But that's so few and far between, because one overriding point of all of this is there's so much choice available. Again, in a Western world, if you're living elsewhere, third world, stuff like that, it's going to be a bit harder. Sometimes in certain countries, it's harder to come by different things. But just walk into your average supermarket, like look at your fruit and veg section. No one's eating every single bit of fruit and veg in that section. No one's eating every little bit and piece. Everyone's kind of customizing it as best they can to their own personal preferences, to their own subjective needs and wants. And that's great. We have this abundance of choice, and therefore there's very little excuse to eat healthy, but eat healthy in the context of your life, doing what's best for you on every level. So while we say sometimes you've got to suck it up and just eat things because they're just good for you, and may not like it as much as you like other things, in fact you may not like it at all, that doesn't have to be true. You don't have to force yourself to do that. More often than not, you can get a good broad range of nutritional quality in your diet without having to suffer. I'm just kind of putting it out there, as you were as well, to say sometimes you want to kind of just have something because it's good for you, not because it tastes fantastic. And that's all right. You just may have to accept that it's not going to be as tasty as a chocolate bar. Yeah,
and that's all right. But there are ways you can mix it together.
Well, I mean, anyone with a smoothie maker, just go to town.
Yeah, just stick everything in it. Sausage, beans, tinned tomatoes, Worcester sauce.
No. You hear that, don't you, of people who've had like gastric bands who then end up liquidizing entire roast dinners and fry-ups and things like that just to get it in their system. And I think to myself, that's such an indication of how far gone you must be. And I really feel sorry for people that have got to that level, because you're not even enjoying the food at that point, are you?
Yeah.
What are you tasting? What does that even? What's the experience of a liquidized roast dinner? That can't be nice.
I like nice experiences with food.
As nice as possible.
Yeah, and I talk about, encourage people to eat hemp all the time, because it is it's a superfood as well, and known to be a superfood. I'm talking about seeds, obviously, not eating a load of weed. However,
well, there are medicinal benefits to marijuana, aren't there?
Yeah,
so
and this
to hemp in general.
To my brownie story.
Let's get into your brownie story. Sorry.
Have you ever had Rasta brownies, Chris?
Have I ever eaten marijuana? Do you mean?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I was putting it nicely.
Yes, I have.
Oh, cool. So you kind of know where this story is going.
I can imagine, yeah.
So I listen, everybody. I made Rasta brownies once. I was sitting there got my bits together, got my brownie mix, because I just got like £2 brownie mix at a co-op or something. I was like, that'll do, just stick some water or some eggs or whatever, and it's done. And sitting there, and I'm like, didn't know how much to put in. And I was like, 3 grams would probably be enough. Like, kind of thinking, oh shit, I hope 3 grams is enough. Actually, it was plenty. Me and this girl made these brownies. She had about a third of it, and I smashed the rest. I was like Taz. I was like licking bits off the plate and stuff. And mate, I just cried. I cried and laughed hysterically. I was incapacitated. I was trying to walk around, and everything, it was just like, it wasn't like a seamless kind of flow of motion. It was like 1,000 photos. You know, when you slow a video down, they film at like 30 frames per second or something, and we can see it about 18 frames a second. Is that right?
Right, yeah.
So it was like I was watching the world at 16 frames per second, so I saw everything as individual stills. Like, there was no movement. It was like still. So I try walking I'm walking this girl home, right, and we're going down the hill. It's freezing outside. It's so cold. But I am hot. I am hot beyond belief. Like, I had my jacket off. I had a hoodie as well. I'm pretty sure I probably had a scarf and all. It was like 3 a.m, clear sky. It's frisson. Do you know what I mean? As you come on en français. And I was steaming. I was literally, you could see it coming off my head like steam. I was so hot. I was like, it's boiling. Like, I'm walking out. We're just laughing. Like, oh, it's such a mess. Like, when I got home, then I had this little drink on the windowsill by my bed, and I was like, oh yeah, I really fancy some squash. Because I had a bit of Peach Robinson's. Oh my God, I got a fetish and a half for that stuff. Oh yes. So anyway, without the aspartame conversation, like, just let me off that, please. So I go to grab this. I go to grab this glass, and I don't actually. I like touch it, but I don't grip it and pick it up. I move my hand and just knock it all over the floor. I'm sitting there, and it's like I say, I can't do anything. I'm like sitting on the floor in this puddle of squash, just laughing at myself, like how much of a fool I am. And then quickly went to bed afterwards. Nice.
Yeah, I think we've probably all been there in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. It was really good fun, actually. No. I wouldn't recommend experimenting with narcotics, but I think if you have the opportunity to do some Rasta brownies, you should definitely do it. The only lesson to be learned is that 3 grams is probably far too much.
Yeah, and I think you kind of proved the point. You know, regardless of how much you put into it, just eating the whole tray or 2/3 of a tray is probably not the best thing. So, you know, moderation. That's the lesson we take from that.
I should have saved some for the next day.
Yeah, exactly. It might have made the work day go a little bit easier the next day.
Oh, mate.
Cool.
Oh, it was so funny. I've been desperate to tell people about that. I've got some other very embarrassing stories, but I'm not going to get into them now because some of them are particularly explicit, and although very entertaining, don't really suit the podcast.
Fair enough. You can tell me after the call.
Yeah, right.
Okay, well, look, I think we've done quite a lot of talking about nutrition today. As we said, it'll be something we come back to in future episodes, just to touch on or do entire episodes on particular things. Yeah. So I think for today,
exactly.
I'm hoping that people have a kind of general overview of what our beliefs are or our ideals are around nutrition. And it's not militant. You know, I think that's the thing I really want to convey to people. Again, there are things that are good, there are things that are not so good. We don't want to demonize things. We don't want to say one thing is better than another. Anyone that's trying to tell you that one definitive way of eating, one pure system of eating, whether that's a particular type of supplement, whether it's a particular methodology, chances are there's profit involved in that. Chances are they're trying to make money out of you by doing it. And it's not harmful. You know, a lot of cases now, they used to be like things like the Atkins diet. You know, people got really hyper acidic and they just thought that meat was okay as long as you didn't eat anything else. And you know, people got really, really sick on that diet, and it worked to some extent. But much like most diets, it worked because it still created a calorie deficit. And most diet fads or systems, a lot of the time, make their mark off the back of helping people to lose weight, because the biggest problem facing most Western populations certainly is obesity, or people just being overweight, people wanting to be leaner, people having been brought up in a culture where there is an abundance of food and they've gone to extreme with it and they've not learned how to
town.
What's that?
Gone to town on sandwiches.
Yeah, exactly. It's just eating too much of too good of things.
Caramel digestives.
So most things are trying to sell themselves on the basis of this is a great way to lose fat. And most things therefore work because all types of diet have some sort of elimination in them. Take out carbs, take out animal products, take out whatever you like, insert type of food here, take out processed foods. You
remove all condiments.
Well, look, you could live off a purely processed diet. You really could, if you're, as long as your calorie requirements kind of match, or are certainly maybe at least on point, if not greater than what you're actually consuming. You're going to feel like crap, but you may not put on weight. We've all seen people who have really poor diets, but they don't have any weight gain. They still look really, really lean. What's going on inside is a different story entirely. And obviously people have different metabolic profiles, different body types. So again, that all has to be factored in, and that's again a conversation for another day. But most systems will create some sort of calorie deficit. And in a lot of cases,
and that's all you need to lose weight, really.
Well, it is.
Just eat less calories.
It's whether or not you're losing the right sort of weight, losing weight in the right way, in a sustainable manner, and all these other sort of things you have to consider. But again, like with good training, good nutrition, it's always worth seeking out the advice of a good coach, a good nutritionist that's going to sit down, meet you where you are, look at what you're currently doing, and build a good diet on the basis of, and the foundation of what you're already doing very, very well. Because you're probably already thinking, if you're getting to a point where you're reaching out to someone for that advice, you're already thinking about your diet, you're already thinking about what you're putting into your body.
Yeah.
And that's, the first win, that you're actually considering it. Where you then go from there, how you acquire the information, it's going to be good to try and connect with someone who's not trying to sell you on a particular system, who's not trying to sell you on a particular product range.
Yeah, they're just selling you their time instead.
Exactly, they're selling you the time, but that's great because
there's unbiased then, though.
Well, exactly.
Unless they've got a white lab coat with GSK. So GSK is a bad example, but we'll just go with Tesco, the big Tesco logo on the side, saying, "Oh yes, I'll help you eat better."
Yeah, but Tesco sell everything, so
even lab coats,
apparently,
and science goggles.
Where is this going?
just don't trust the quack. That's what I'm saying.
Basically seek out the advice of someone who's been there, done it very well, who looks like someone who's gone through a similar journey to you, or is actually a qualified professional in that particular space. Or at the very least, just experiment on yourself very, very gradually. Don't try and reinvent the wheel overnight. Don't rip everything out and start from scratch. Start with the good basic stuff that you do and build on that. And as a very simple guideline, something I use in a broad context is just think about 3 key things. It's the 3T system. It's total, type, and time. So how much or how little you're eating, depending on what your requirements are, or what you may be doing slightly wrong, because some people do undereat as well as overeat. Think about the type. Think about the quality of the food you're actually consuming, and think about the timing of it. Think about when you're eating certain things. Can certain foods be more optimal to consume earlier in the day, or in the middle of the day, or later in the day, or around training, before, after? That's kind of a good way of building a good structured diet, is thinking about when you're going to be eating certain things, when you're going to be able to eat the best possible things. Because as we've said, you don't want to really be forced into convenience choices too much, regardless of what your restrictions may be in terms of not eating meat or not eating particular types of carbohydrate, not eat, or trying to reduce your fat intake, whatever it may be. Just going for convenience too often is very rarely going to be the solution to any of your particular health needs. It's better to kind of plan things ahead, have a strategy around it, and it doesn't have to be rigid. You can build some flexibility in there. You can allow for meals out and the occasional lunch on the go, or a cheat day, as they would call it in a lot of different dietary systems as well. But just kind of understand when certain things are going to be better for you to eat than others. When it's going to create a situation where you maybe need a little bit more energy, so you don't want too much food in your system. You certainly don't want your body having to break down lots of animal protein or lots of starchy, stodgy carbohydrates. You want something that's a bit lighter to get you through the day, to avoid the afternoon funk. So think about it in that respect.
Afternoon funk?
The afternoon funk.
Is that like afternoon delight?
Yeah, afternoon funk comes before afternoon delight. You always have the funk before the delight.
Yeah, the delight is like post-funk, innit?
Yeah, definitely. Funk first, then the delight.
Yeah.
So, as I said, so total, type, and time. If you think about those three things, if you're even considering on a very small level each of those three areas, how much you're eating, what you're actually consuming, and when you're consuming it, that's going to be a great place to start. And again, don't be too rigid. Don't freak yourself out. Don't think you've got to do it all in one go. Just take your time and remember it's a journey.
A very, very exciting journey full of all kinds of little petit filous and little French fancies.
Definitely. And
I meant to say French fancies first, not petit filous. I don't know why I got stuck in yogurt.
And try new things. You might be surprised. If you've never had an aubergine, buy an aubergine and find some way of cooking it in or integrating it into a meal you already have. That's a great thing to do. If you want to try new things that are healthy, don't try and build a whole meal around the new thing. Just see if you can find a way to add it to something you already make, something you're already comfortable with. I think people get overwhelmed with recipe guides and new ways of eating because they've got to reinvent everything about what they're already doing. Try and integrate more vegetables, more healthy foods into things that you're maybe already eating. Push the less good stuff out a little bit, because if you're filling up on more good things, the higher quality proteins, the more fibrous foods, you're going to fill up on those things before you get a chance to eat too much of the less good or the not so good stuff.
Yeah.
It's a great way. If I want to help someone to lose weight, one thing I will certainly try and do is just encourage them to eat more vegetables, because immediately it just makes them feel fuller, quicker, and it gets in more nutrient density into their diet as well. I don't force feed them. I don't give them things that
you stuff a funnel into their mouth, tie them to a chair.
You drip feed it. You bring it in slowly. You integrate things. Especially if it's someone that isn't used to eating a lot of vegetables or has a belief that they don't like vegetables. That's a real truth, that people think I don't like something. They firmly believe that this isn't something they will enjoy. And it may be because it's some sort of way past early life experience around that one thing. I remember Brussels sprouts. I mean, I'll quite happily eat Brussels sprouts now, but for years I would say I don't like Brussels sprouts. I don't like them. I think I had them one year where they weren't very well cooked and they were a little bit raw. And I had them in my roast dinner, and it was disgusting. It really put me off them for a long, long time. And then I had them when they were prepared quite nicely, and I thought, oh, actually, that's quite enjoyable. But again, tastes
I like
change.
Sprouts in like a fry-up, like a bubble and squeaker.
Yes, yeah.
They're good. They're right in them.
Yeah, bit of bubble and squeak is always quite nice.
Mix it all up with your parsnips and sweet potato and leftovers, and then cover it in yesterday's gravy as well. Oh, mate.
Oh, mate, I'm getting hungry. It's nearly dinner time.
Right, should we rock, paper, scissors to finish up then?
Yeah, go on in.
Yeah? All right, after 3, 4, ready? 3, 2, 1,
scissors.
Rock. Yes!
Okay.
I won again!
Can I get off the call now then? I'll just leave you to it.
Yeah, all right, see that, great. Right, okay, so let me try and get this right. I might need you here just to fill in any gaps when I miss them out.
Okay.
Feed the horse. So... Guys, that's it for today. There's a lot to talk about nutrition. We will come back around to certain stuff and go into it a bit more detail when we get into our actual training and what we're experimenting with. But for the minute, we're just throwing stuff at you and covering you in it.
And we hope some of it sticks.
Yeah. Avoid the sticks. Go for twiglets instead. They're basically sticks with Marmite on them. So that's everything. Guys, subscribe. Send us a rate and a review if you want to give us a bit of love. We'd really appreciate that. Tell your friends all about us. Nice things first, nasty things a bit later, maybe when we get to know you a bit, so we don't take it to heart. Check out Chris's website, coachthatcher.com, soon to be christopherthatcher.com, if I'm correct.
That's correct.
Don't tell him though, it's a secret. Yeah, definitely subscribe. Oh, another thing, I'm doing show notes, guys. It's been a bit a rough and ready process getting it all together, but I'm doing show notes, so check out the website for the show notes. It's detailed lists of everything that we cover in each episode, so if you feel you missed anything, don't worry about it. Go over to morethanlifting.com/episode, then whatever the episode number is. So, for example, this is episode 6. So morethanlifting.com/episode 6 is going to take you to the show notes for this episode. And I think that's about it, Chris. What did I miss? Oh, yeah, social media and stuff. So social media. There you go.
Cool, well done. I think that was fairly seamless.
And if you're a girl and you're listening, add me on Snapchat. Rhys Morgan. Oh, no, it's Rhys T. Morgan for Snapchat. What's your Snapchat, Chris?
It's Coach Thatch81.
And add Coach Thatch81 as well. He's better looking than I am.
I think we both have our own defining characteristics in terms of our aesthetic value, so...
Okay, cool, mate. Well, let's wrap it up. We'll catch you next week. Next week, it gets really interesting. Actually, next week we start to talk about our training, what we're doing. We talk about how the podcast is going to start to be formatted from now. Mostly us chatting shit to each other, but it's going to be a lot about specific experiments, workouts and stuff that we're doing, the results we're getting from them. And literally, this is the last of the boring episodes where we cover everything. And we get into the real nitty-gritty of how you can experiment with your own training, how you can mix it up, how you can adjust, and how to evaluate your program as you're going through it to make your little tweaks to get better results. Okay, so it's about to get really, really cool. Sorry it's taken us so long to get all these episodes out. I mean, it's been about 3 weeks altogether. But now it gets cool, so stay tuned. Check out the next episode coming out next Thursday. Check out the show notes for all our other episodes for lots of links and other things. And I've basically just done the outro again, so I'm going to sign it off now. Chris, have a good one, mate. I'll catch up with you soon. And bye.
See ya.
If you like elbows, add me on Snapchat too. Rhys T. Morgan. All right, man.
This is the podcast episode that's never going to end.
Have you got anything else to add, Chris?